How's it going, everybody? So today I'm gonna make a review of my Seiko SBBN031, aka Seiko Tuna. First of all, I'm really sorry for the reflection. This watch is impossible to video without the reflection because of the dome crystal. It's impossible. I'm trying to get good lighting, being in front of a window, but you know, it's really difficult to video without reflection. So this is going to be a bit of a long review just because I think that this watch is, there's a lot to talk about with this watch. There's a lot of things that I was thinking about before I actually had it in person that caused me some, I was reticent to purchase it. Just misinformation. Like, I live in North America and Canada, so you cannot go into a shop to check this watch out. You can do that with many other Seikos, but this one, you can't do it. So, as you can see, this is the SBBN031 Big Tuna. This is the one with Marine Master on the dial with the 7C46 quartz movement. This is the tuna to get, in my opinion. I got this tuna. I was looking at the bigger, more expensive tunas too, but I just, I thought some of them were 50 millimeters over that, and they're different to service, and you don't get warranty on some of them in North America. So, I wasn't willing to go to that price. Now this segues into price. Price with this watch it's quite expensive. It's $1,000 US. So with that quartz movement, a lot of times we can't justify that ourselves. But since I feel like that quartz movement is a really special one, I think that this definitely is worth the cost, in my opinion. Just because this is such a special movement, a very special watch. It's not a generic. And I say generic, it's not a Ronda that's in 20 different watches, hundreds of different watches. It's not a other quartz Seiko. It's kind of a special movement. And for me, and I specify for me, if you enjoy watches with Ronda movements, I have some older ones, other Seiko quartz movements. You like quartz watches, that's wonderful, okay? For me, I like automatics. I don't know why. There's a romantic nature to them, automatics. The quartz, this one is sick, right? Because it's a special watch, a special movement that was made exactly for this watch. It was made for saturation diving. 7C46 quartz movement. It's a super accurate, high torque, all metal construction quartz movement with 7 jewels. So it's a serviceable movement. It's all metal and it's high torque. As you can see, the hands on this watch are quite large. So needs a big, powerful movement to move them. Seconds hand, it moves it, tick, tick, bang on, pretty much bang on to every single indice and marker, minute marker. So very nice. The quartz movement is supposed to last about 5 years on a battery. I have not had this watch 5 years. I've had it for a couple weeks. So, I don't know what the experience is like changing the battery. Alright, design. The overall design of this watch is completely unique to Seiko. There's nothing that looks like this. There's, no generic, it's not like, I say generic diving watch, kind of Submariner-esque, but I mean, the Submariner is the original. This thing looks like nothing else on the market. There's obviously the solar tunas and the more affordable versions of this and more expensive versions of this too, but when you see tuna, it is definitely Seiko. It's iconic to Seiko. I'm reticent to use the word iconic. I feel like it's overused. People say iconic to the point where it means nothing now, but I think that this is an iconic Seiko design, at least in terms of watches. Now, the average consumer, you tell them this is iconic, they'll be like, well, what? It's a Seiko. Never seen it, don't care. So maybe not in that case, but I think that this is a fantastic watch design. The shroud, everything about it looks it's beefy and tough at the same time. It has kind of an industrial beauty, if that makes sense, right? You can look at like a big diesel industrial engine. Sure, it's just a big hunk of steel and it's kind of meant for something, but you can look at it and truly marvel at the engineering and the design behind it, and I think that this watch has a similar characteristic. In terms of the finishing, this watch is really good. Like, it's a lot. I personally think it's better than, for example, a turtle or a monster or an SKX or that kind of level Seiko. So the finishing is really good. It's mostly brushed, and you can see the top of the shroud here is polished with really nice brushing. And for me, the finishing on this watch to me is really good. It's nice and kind of soft. I like to say with the brushing, it you know, the striations are nice and tight. They don't kind of, you can't really see them. Polished in the back, and just overall the finishing is really good. There's no sort of chapter ring misalignment. It's just a really good, well finished, well quality controlled watch. I know that Seiko does have problems, and believe you me, I've had SKXs that are kind of funky before, so I'm aware of Seiko's quality control problems. But on this particular model, there's no quality control issues. Really good overall. As you can see, the dial here, it has a step dial. You can barely see this kind of ring around the dial there. So the indices are on another kind of disc above where the rest of the logo dial is. You can really see it if you watch a video of the blue model or you see the Patty edition. You can really tell that stepping there, and you know, that's a cool little detail that you never really notice until you look really close. The rest of the dial is printed aside from the Seiko logo. This one has the Marine Master Professional 300. That was really important to me for some reason. I wanted Marine Master on it, so that's partially why I jumped on one of these, because I was worried I was going to wait too long and then I'd have to get a Pro Specs one, and I just prefer where it says Marine Master. The dial is printed, as I said. The indices are like printed with oodles of lume. The fact that it's printed doesn't bother me. This is supposed to be kind of a tool, no-nonsense watch, and so I think that the printed dial look is fine. A lot of watches, in my opinion, with printed dials are easy to read, and the fact that they're not applied doesn't bug me. I mention now, too, that the lume on this watch is absolutely insane. This is the lume just after being out in the sun, and as you can see here, it's extremely bright. It's nuclear for quite a while, and then it kind of tempers down and sort of lasts all night. So this lume is like, you're not going to experience, in my opinion, lume better than this. It's it'll last all night. You can put it down on the table and you can see the lume shining down onto the table because it's so strong. It's really good, and it's really good on the indices and the hands and on the seconds hand lollipop, as well as on the hardlex covered pip there. The crown is really nice. It's nicer than cheaper Seikos. The way it feels, the winding, there's no play at all in the crown, and when you screw it back in, it's tight, it's smooth, it's really nice. Bezel action, it's noisier than most Seikos. It's very Seiko. Like, Seiko has a very unique bezel action, in my opinion. It feels very different from other watches. It's less click, 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 and more so like you're kind of pushing it and it clicks as you push it, if that makes sense. So if you're used to other Seikos like Turtles or SKXs, the feeling is familiar, but this one is just a little bit better. It's noisy, it's precise. It's definitely premium feeling and very Seiko, which I personally enjoy. This is aluminum. I believe the bezel insert is aluminum, and there's a hardlex crystal over the pip. It's very, it's glossy, so it's kind of either there's some kind of lacquer on it or it's in glossy paint. It's not ceramic. That's fine with me. Ceramic isn't the be-all, end-all, and you know, I know people would crap on this watch maybe for it not being ceramic, but people seem to accept the fact that Tudors are not ceramic, and nobody seems to complain about that. So, you know, I personally don't mind the no ceramic. It's fine for me. Size. So this is going to be a little bit of an interesting topic here. So size. This watch is 48 millimeters. It's not as big as you would think. It is big. I'll put up a few pictures. This is a little deceiving when you take a picture close. I have a 7.5-inch wrist. It's not as big as you would think. Like, it's thicker, but you know, if you're expecting like, oh, okay, 48 millimeters, massive Invicta, not even close. I have seen big Invictas in real life, and this thing is not even close to the size of those. You know, this is a very good example of good execution and design. It fits really well. It's very comfortable, and I'll put it up next now to some other watches, so I can try and. 48 millimeters doesn't explain the size of this watch, right? So here's the Tuna, and here's a turtle. So not a whole lot of difference. The tuna is a little bigger, but really not by much. So these are kind of two. This is a kind of common Seiko that some people might be able to identify with. Thickness is pretty much the same, I would say. Up against an SKX, again, very similar. The SKX is definitely smaller, but you know, the tuna holds its own. Like it's really nowhere near as big as you would think. So that was something I was concerned about. And I'm going to show you a couple other 42 mils that wear bigger than you would think. So this Fortis here is 42 millimeters. This Fortis B42 Flieger, and you know, since there's no bezel on this watch, it definitely feels bigger. It looks bigger to me, wears bigger to me than this Seiko Tuna. So, you know, thickness is about the same. This has a 775 so it's pretty thick, but the lug to lug is something that really defines, in my opinion, the size of a watch and how it wears. This watch deceives you. Another watch that's common, Oris Aquis. The Oris Aquis is definitely thinner than the Tuna, and it definitely feels kind of more sleek, if that makes sense. But, sorry, it's not focusing. So, but in terms of like how it looks, Oris Aquis is definitely smaller looking, but not a whole lot. I think if this Seiko didn't have the shroud, it'd be probably about the same. So, Oris Aquis. Lastly, just in terms of size, this Breitling Super Ocean wears rather large too, and it looks bigger. It looks, you know, similar to the Seiko. Since this has a steel bezel, it to me looks larger than the Seiko does. But this watch, it really doesn't wear as big as you would think. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the bracelet now. The bracelet, not the clasp. The bracelet's pretty good. It's very comfortable. It's polished well. The pin and collar system seems to be a controversial thing, so, you know, I've never actually adjusted pin and collar myself. I have a turtle, as you saw, with pin and collar, and I was too afraid to do it, so I got a watchmaker to do it, but I decided to try this with myself, given the quarantine situation, and honestly, this is very easy. So long as you follow the arrows that are pointing down and you put the pins back in properly and you just go slowly and take your time and be a little bit patient, you know, it's going to take you 10-15 minutes max, right? It's really easy to do. I'm not really sold on the controversial nature of the pin and collar. Like, I've had screws on some watches that back out occasionally. Like, these will never back out, and they're really tight. There's not a lot of play here, and so, you know, I think that the bracelet is pretty good with the pin and collar, so that's not a complaint for me. Overall, the bracelet is very comfortable. I'll speak on the clasp in the negative section, but the clasp functionally, in the positive sense, works well. It snaps in, it clicks, it's secure, it's really good. Seiko does a good job of function with their clasps. They may not be the most aesthetically pleasing, nor use the highest materials, but they always work, and they'll never fall off your wrist. Negatives. Number 1, Hardlex crystal. I don't have a problem with Hardlex. I've never scratched Hardlex. It has Hardlex, there's nothing you can do, but I think that a sapphire crystal would be a bit of a nicer option to give you a bit more peace of mind when you're spending $1,000 on the watch, that you're not going to scratch the crystal or something like that. But I think that overall, you know, I'm okay with the Hardlex. I would just rather have sapphire, if that makes sense. This clasp. This clasp is not as bad, I think, as people say. Again, with Seiko, cheaper clasps like this operate really well. Like, there's no problem, it works fine, right? It's also titanium. You can see here where it says titanium alloy and stainless steel. I believe that the entire bracelet is stainless steel, but this part here is titanium. But the issue for me is, it's kind of thick. It's not as thick, you know, if you're, yeah, it is pretty thick, you know, it's a thick clasp, and this extension system is nice, but I find it to be a little crude. Like, if you're gonna actually, like, if you're wearing this on a hot day and you want to depend on this to, you know, use it every day to extend, it just, aesthetically, it doesn't look very good. Yes, it does the job. You know, it's a good working tool. But if you're looking for something that's aesthetically nice, I don't think that this is here. But again, perhaps that's not the intention. This is a straight up tool watch and nothing else. But in any case, I think that this clasp could be improved. Just because it's kind of thick, it looks a little funny, and this extension feature, a lot of times you end up pushing this when you're opening it, and this goes open a little bit, but overall, I think the extension, the clasp, could be improved. You know, despite my criticism of this clasp, I'm not going to change this to a strap code. In my opinion, strap codes are not as good as this. So as long as this is comfortable for you, I think that this, personally, I'd keep it on. It's a good clasp overall. Lastly, one thing that I don't think come across in video, and it's hard to tell here, is that the indices are often more yellow or green tinted than they appear. They're not white. So if you look at it's hard to see. If you look at this versus an SKX, the SKX indices are white, whereas this they're kind of cream color, yellow. It's hard to tell, but the thing is like these are glowing all the time. Like even, you know, when you're just outside, you walk into the house, these things will be lit up. So I wish it was white like this, but I think maybe the amount of lume that's on it perhaps kind of makes that not possible. You know, who knows, right? I'm just speculating, but I wish that these were full-on white, not sort of a creamy color. And it really, whenever you watch videos online or pictures, it doesn't come across as well as it is in person. It's not like a faux patina look, but or full-on green or something, but that's just something I noticed, that I didn't realize it was this sort of cream color, and I wish it was white. But since it's like perpetually glowing all the time, you know, it doesn't bother me. At the end of the day, it's okay, but it's just something I noticed. Lastly, I would say, you know, with the quartz movement and the quality, like, people don't like A, the hardlex, B, maybe the bracelet, the size, whatever, and the quartz movement. I think that, you know, if those are your initial hiccups and you're set against quartz, you know, and you're never gonna like it, probably don't get this. But if you're like me and you kind of, I don't know, I like quartz, but I don't sometimes, mostly not, but I think it's worth it. It's a unique piece to have. I don't have any high-end quartz really other than this, so that's unique, and I think that this is such a unique piece, it deserves to be purchased, for me at least. So if you're not totally sold on this watch and are kind of humming and hawing, I think give it a chance, but it's not one of those watches that you should buy and sort of impulse buy. At least for me, spending $1,000 US is not an impulse purchase. That's a fairly hefty chunk of change, especially for something that's a kind of a superfluous item, right? So in any case, that's the rationale I think you should go have when you're purchasing one of these, is study it, know what you're getting into, and just kind of accept the fact that it has hardlex, quartz, and all that sort of thing, but I think it's well worth it. That's my review of the Seiko Tuna SBBN031. This watch is fantastic. This was kind of a grail watch for me. You know, I don't know, it's just one of those things that I added to cart and then didn't buy it, and I don't know why. I think it was just because of the quartz movement. I'm a snob, maybe, I don't know, but after getting it, it's well worth it. You know, I don't see myself ever selling this watch. It's just so unique. It feels high quality. It is high quality. You're never going to see another one on the street. I think if someone else is wearing one of these, they're going to be a watch enthusiast as well. And so, overall, that's my review. Thank you for watching, and take care of yourselves and your family in this time. And grab a tuna if you ever get the chance, or if you're interested in one. So, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.